The Chonos Conspiracy. Chapter 1, Wreckage and Whispers. The clang of metal against metal was Stewart's symphony. He lived and breathed the scent of lubricant and the feel of a wrench in his calloused hands. His workshop, a corrugated iron haven nestled in the sprawling junkyard on the merchant hub planet of Xylos Prime, was his sanctuary. Xylos Prime was a swirling vortex of intergalactic trade, a place where fortunes were made and broken, and where the discarded remnants of 1,000 worlds washed ashore. It was in the deepest, grimiest corner of this junkyard, amidst the twisted exoskeletons of droids and the shattered hulls of starfreighters, that Stewart found him. The transport pod was a mangled mess, its outer shell ripped open like a tin can. Stewart, ever curious, had been drawn to it by a faint, almost imperceptible whine. He thought it was a malfunctioning power cell, but what he found inside was far stranger. Crouched in the wreckage, barely alive, was a creature unlike any he had ever seen. It was small, no bigger than a large dog, but its features were a bewildering mix of rhino and cheetah, with thick, chitinous plates covering its back and flanks, and razor-sharp claws glinting in the dim light. Its large, luminous eyes, the color of molten gold, stared up at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "What in the blazes?" Stewart muttered, his grease-stained fingers reaching out tentatively. The creature hissed, a low, guttural sound that vibrated in Stewart's chest. He instinctively recoiled, but something in its eyes, a flicker of vulnerability, stopped him. "Easy there, little fella," he said softly, his voice a gentle counterpoint to the harshness of the junkyard. "I'm not going to hurt you." He spent the next hour coaxing the creature out of the wreckage, offering it scraps of protein bars and water. It was wary at first, but hunger eventually won out. As it ate, Stewart examined it more closely. He noticed the numerous scars that crisscrossed its body, evidence of a hard life. He also noticed the small, almost imperceptible device embedded in its neck, a tracking implant, now deactivated. Stewart had heard whispers in the cantinas, hushed rumors of the Chonos, a warrior race known for their ruthless efficiency and their genetically engineered war beasts, the rhino-cheetahs. These creatures were legendary, feared throughout the galaxy for their speed, strength, and ferocity. Could this be one of them? A discarded runt, perhaps, deemed too weak to serve. He didn't care. He saw only a frightened, injured animal in need of help. He named him Bolt. Chapter 2, Forging a Bond. Nursing Bolt back to health was a challenge. The creature was skittish and distrustful, prone to sudden bursts of aggression. But Stewart was patient, understanding. He fed him regularly, cleaned his wounds, and spoke to him in a soothing voice, even when Bolt snarled and snapped. Slowly, grudgingly, Bolt began to trust him. He would allow Stewart to touch him, to scratch him behind the ears. He even started to purr, a deep, rumbling sound that resonated through Stewart's bones. As Bolt grew stronger, Stewart began to train him. He started with simple commands: sit, stay, fetch. He used a combination of treats and positive reinforcement, gradually pushing Bolt to his limits. He discovered that Bolt was incredibly intelligent, quick to learn and eager to please. He also discovered that Bolt was anything but weak. The discarded cub possessed an incredible burst of speed, far exceeding even the legendary rhino-cheetahs. Stewart suspected that it had something to do with the unique genetic anomaly. He also possessed an uncanny ability to sense danger, a sixth sense that allowed him to anticipate attacks. Stewart customized a harness for Bolt, one that would allow him to use his exceptional speed and agility to their advantage. He also fabricated a pair of energy shields that could be attached to Bolt's flanks, providing him with an extra layer of protection. He knew that keeping Bolt hidden in the junkyard forever was not an option. The Chonos might come looking for him. Or worse, someone might recognize him and try to sell him to the highest bidder. He needed a plan. One evening, while nursing a synth ale in a smoky cantina, Stewart overheard a conversation about the Xylos Prime Arena. It was a gladiatorial combat arena, a place where humans, aliens, and genetically engineered beasts fought for glory and riches. The prize money was substantial, which Stewart needed. An idea sparked in his mind. It was risky, but it was his best hope. He would enter Bolt in the arena. If they won, they could earn enough money to disappear, to start a new life far away from Xylos Prime. Chapter 3: Rise of the Underdog. The Xylos Prime Arena was a brutal spectacle, a gladiatorial contest where fortunes were made and lives were lost. Spectators from across the galaxy flocked to witness the carnage, wagering vast sums of money on their favorite combatants. Stewart and Bolt were underdogs from the start. The other competitors were seasoned veterans, hardened warriors with years of experience. Their beasts were colossal monstrosities, bred for destruction, armed with razor-sharp claws and plated armor. Bolt, being a rhino-cheetah cub, was considered a joke. The crowd laughed when he entered the arena, a small, seemingly fragile creature compared to the hulking behemoths that surrounded him. But Bolt was far from fragile. In their first fight, they faced a hulking Grolak, a creature with thick, armored hide and massive claws. The Grolak charged, bellowing like a wounded star whale. Bolt dodged with lightning speed, darting around the Grolak's clumsy attacks. He used his agility to his advantage, striking at the Grolak's vulnerable spots, his claws tearing through its armor. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Bolt systematically dismantled the Grolak, its massive body collapsing in a heap on the arena floor. Stewart and Bolt had won their first fight. They continued their winning streak, defeating one opponent after another. Bolt's speed, agility, and sixth sense proved to be an unstoppable combination. He developed a signature move that Stewart called the blur strike. Bolt would use his incredible speed to create a blur of motion and then deliver a series of devastating attacks before disappearing again. The crowd began to take notice. They started to cheer for the underdog, for the unlikely duo who were defying all expectations. Stewart and Bolt became a sensation, the talk of the arena. Their fights were always sold out, and the betting odds shifted dramatically in their favor. Stewart used the prize money to upgrade Bolt's harness and energy shields. He also hired a skilled medic to tend to Bolt's injuries after each fight. He was determined to protect Bolt, to give him the life he deserved. Chapter 4: Whispers of Chonos. Their success did not go unnoticed. News of the Blur Beast and his human companion reached the ears of the Chonos. On the Chonos homeworld, a council of elders gathered in a darkened chamber. Holographic projections flickered on the walls, displaying images of Bolt in action. "The cub, it lives," a gravelly voice rumbled through the chamber. It was Elder Forlag, the leader of the council, his face etched with age and authority. "Indeed," responded Elder Thrax, his voice sharp and calculating. "And it has become a champion." "Impossible," Elder Lyra hissed, her voice laced with disbelief. "The cub was deemed defective, genetically inferior. It should have perished long ago." "Yet it thrives," Forlag countered, his eyes narrowed. "Its victories are undeniable. The human, he has somehow unlocked its potential. We must reclaim it," Thrax insisted. "The cub is valuable. Its genetic code could hold the key to unlocking new capabilities in our war beasts. Or it could be a threat," Lyra cautioned. "Its genetic anomaly could be unstable, dangerous. It might be best to eliminate it." The council was divided. Some wanted to reclaim Bolt, to exploit his unique abilities. Others wanted to destroy him, to prevent him from becoming a threat. Forlag listened to their arguments, his face impassive. He knew that the situation was delicate. The Chonos had always prided themselves on their control, on their ability to manipulate genetics to create the perfect warriors. The existence of a genetically superior rhino cheetah that had been discarded was a blow to their pride, a challenge to their authority. "We will send an envoy to Xylos Prime," Forlag declared, his voice leaving no room for debate. "They will assess the situation and determine the best course of action. If the cub can be reclaimed, we will bring it back. If it is too dangerous, we will eliminate it. But we must proceed with caution. We cannot afford to alert the galaxy to our interest in this matter." Meanwhile, back on Xylos Prime, Steward was oblivious to the machinations of the Chonos. He was focused on the upcoming championship fight, the biggest challenge of their lives. He knew that winning the championship would give them the means to disappear, to escape the clutches of the Chonos. But he also knew that the Chonos were coming. He could feel it in his gut, a growing sense of unease. He had seen strangers watching him and Bolt, their faces hidden in the shadows. He had overheard whispers in the cantinas, rumors of Chonos agents operating on Xylos Prime. He knew that he had to be ready. He had to protect Bolt, no matter the cost. Chapter 5, Seeds of Doubt. The victory was sweet. Steward and Bolt were crowned champions of the Xylos Prime arena. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Steward raised Bolt's paw high in the air. They had done it. They had defied the odds and emerged victorious. But even in the midst of the celebration, Steward couldn't shake off the feeling of trepidation. He saw faces in the crowd that didn't belong, stern, unsmiling figures with the unmistakable bearing of Chonos warriors. They were here, watching him, studying Bolt. Back at his makeshift apartment, Steward reinforced the defenses, double-locking the doors and setting up makeshift alarms. He knew it wouldn't hold off determined Chonos warriors, but it would buy them time. That night, he had a vivid dream. He was in a vast, sterile laboratory, surrounded by Chonos scientists in white coats. They were dissecting Bolt, probing his mind, trying to unlock the secrets of his genetic anomaly. Bolt was screaming, his eyes filled with terror. Steward woke up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked at Bolt, who was sleeping peacefully beside him, his chest rising and falling rhythmically. He knew he couldn't let the Chonos get their hands on Bolt. He would fight them to the death. The next day, a sleek, black transport landed near his workshop. A group of Chonos warriors emerged, led by a tall, imposing figure with cold, calculating eyes. "Steward," the leader said, his voice deep and resonant. "We have come for the cub." Steward stood his ground, his eyes blazing with defiance. "He's not going anywhere. He belongs to the Chonos," the leader said, his hand resting on the hilt of his energy sword. "He is our property." "He's not property," Steward retorted. "He's a living being. And he's my friend." "You are interfering in matters you do not understand," the leader warned. "Step aside, and we will not harm you." "Harm you?" a new voice echoed. Suddenly, a figure detached himself from the back of the Chonos group. He was taller than the rest, imposing, and his armor was decorated with gold emblems of a high rank. He had a face both handsome and cruel, his eyes gleaming with intelligence and a hint of amusement. "Please, don't be insolent. I am Garo," the new alien creature added. "And you must agree now that your pet has the potential to yield much higher amount of interest than this whole planet. I'm sure you'd be very well rewarded to let us proceed." Steward glanced around in panic, but it was all for naught. They were surrounded. He and Bolt couldn't fight them all off. "He's not for sale," Steward said, his voice trembling slightly. Garo chuckled, a hollow, unpleasant sound. "Everything has a price, human. You just haven't been offered the right one yet." While Garo tried to buy Steward over, Bolt was restless. He didn't like the newcomers. They had bad intentions written all over them. And he could sense their power. These were not ordinary warriors. Steward knew they couldn't win a straight fight. He needed to think of something, anything, to get them out of this situation. That's when a plan started to form in Steward's mind. Chapter 6, The Escape. Steward pretends to look conflicted for a while. All right. I guess I can understand, he replied reluctantly. Let me prepare Bolt, and we can go back with you. But I need time. He's sensitive. Garrow's smile widened. I knew you were a reasonable man. We will give you 1 hour. But don't try anything foolish. We will be watching. Once the Chonos warriors retreated slightly, Steward quickly ushered Bolt back into the workshop. We have to get out of here, Steward said, his voice urgent. They're not going to let us leave alive if they get their hands on you. Steward worked frantically, gathering his tools and packing a bag with supplies. He knew they couldn't stay on Xylos Prime. The Chonos would hunt them down. They needed to find a place where they could hide, a place where the Chonos wouldn't dare to follow. We're going to the outer rim, Steward said, his voice firm. There's a smuggler's den on the planet Narshada. It's a dangerous place, but it's also a place where you can disappear. He fired up his old, battered freighter, the Rusty Bucket. It was a relic from a bygone era, but it was reliable, and it had a few hidden compartments that Steward had installed over the years. He loaded Bolt into the hold, securing him in a reinforced crate. He programmed the navicomputer with the coordinates for Narshada and prepared for takeoff. As they blasted off into the atmosphere, Steward looked back at Xylos Prime. He knew he was leaving everything behind, his home, his livelihood. But he had no choice. He had to protect Bolt. The Rusty Bucket lurched and groaned as it entered hyperspace. Steward settled into the pilot's seat, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. He knew the journey would be long and perilous. But he was determined to reach Narshada, to find a safe haven for him and Bolt. Garrow watched the Rusty Bucket disappear into hyperspace. He clenched his fist in anger. He dared to defy us, Garrow growled. He will pay for this. What are your orders, sir? One of the warriors asked. Prepare the hound, Garrow said, his eyes blazing. We will track them to the ends of the galaxy. And when we find them, we will make them regret the day they crossed the Chonos. Chapter 7, Shadows of Narshada. Narshada, the smuggler's moon, was a festering wound on the face of the galaxy. A perpetual twilight cloaked its grimy streets, filled with gangs, smugglers, and outcasts. It was a place where anything could be bought or sold, and where life was cheap. Steward guided the Rusty Bucket through the crowded space lanes and landed at a dilapidated docking bay. He knew he had to be careful. The Hutt cartel controlled Narshada, and they didn't take kindly to strangers. He unloaded Bolt from the freighter, keeping him close by his side. They made their way through the throngs of beings, their senses assaulted by the cacophony of sounds and smells. Steward had heard of a contact on Narshada, a Rhodian smuggler named Greedo, not the infamous one, apparently a common name amongst Rhodians. He hoped that Greedo could provide them with information and a safe place to lie low. He found Greedo in a seedy cantina, surrounded by a motley crew of thugs. The Rhodian squinted at him with bulbous eyes. You got the credits? Greedo asked, his voice raspy. Steward nodded and placed a pouch of credits on the table. I need information. And a place to stay. Greedo scooped up the credits and grinned, revealing rows of pointed teeth. What kind of information you looking for? I'm looking for a place to disappear, Steward said, his voice low. A place where the Chonos won't find me. Greedo's grin faded, and he looked around nervously. The Chonos? You got problems with the Chonos? That's bad news, friend. I know, Stewart said. That's why I need your help. Greedo hesitated for a moment, then sighed. All right, I know a place. It's a rundown apartment in the lower levels. It's not pretty, but it's safe. And I know a guy who can get you fake IDs. But it's going to cost you. Stewart agreed to Greedo's price and followed him through the labyrinthine streets of Narshada. They arrived at a crumbling building, its walls covered in graffiti and its windows boarded up. This is it, Greedo said. Don't expect any luxuries. And watch your back. This place is crawling with scum. Stewart thanked Greedo and paid him the agreed-upon fee. He and Bolt entered the apartment, locking the door behind them. The apartment was small and dingy, with peeling paint and a leaky roof. But it was safe, for now. Stewart knew they couldn't stay here forever. The Chonos would eventually find them, no matter how well they hid. He needed to find a way to fight back, to turn the tables on the Chonos. But he was just a mechanic, a simple man with no experience in galactic politics or warfare. He looked at Bolt, who was sniffing around the apartment, his tail wagging tentatively. He knew that Bolt was his greatest asset, his only hope. He would protect Bolt, no matter what it took. He owed him that much. Chapter 8, The Informant. Days turned into weeks on Narshada. Stewart and Bolt kept a low profile, venturing out only when necessary to buy food and supplies. Stewart used his mechanic skills to earn a few credits, repairing droids and fixing broken machinery. He also spent his time gathering information, talking to smugglers, mercenaries, and underworld figures. He learned that the Chonos had a significant presence on Narshada, using it as a base of operations for their illicit activities. He also learned of a rumor. A secretive Chonos facility, hidden deep within the Undercity, rumored to be conducting experiments on captured creatures with high values. One evening, while visiting a cantina, Stewart overheard a conversation that caught his attention. Two Trandoshan bounty hunters were discussing a job they had been offered by a Chonos agent. They want us to find a human and his pet, one of the Trandoshan said, his voice guttural. A rhino cheetah cub. They're offering a lot of credits. Stewart's blood ran cold. He knew they were talking about him and Bolt. He waited until the Trandoshans had left the cantina, then followed them into the shadows. He ambushed them in a dark alleyway, knocking them unconscious with a wrench. He dragged them back to his apartment and tied them to chairs. Bolt stood guard, growling menacingly. All right, start talking, Stewart said, his voice hard. Who hired you to find me? The Trandoshans were terrified. They knew they were outmatched by Stewart and his rhino cheetah. They confessed everything. They revealed the name of the Chonos agent who had hired them, a ruthless warrior named Zorn. They also revealed the location of Zorn's hideout, a fortified warehouse on the outskirts of the Undercity. Stewart listened intently, his mind racing. He knew he had to act fast. Zorn and his men were closing in. He released the Trandoshans, warning them to leave Narshada and never return. They scrambled away, their tails between their legs. Stewart turned to Bolt, his eyes determined. It's time to go on the offensive. He armed himself with a blaster pistol and a vibroknife. He strapped Bolt into his harness and activated the energy shields. They set off into the night, determined to confront Zorn and expose the Chonos conspiracy. Chapter 9, Assault on the Warehouse. The warehouse was heavily guarded, surrounded by a perimeter of Chonos warriors armed with energy rifles. Stewart knew that a frontal assault would be suicide. He needed a plan. He used his mechanic skills to disable the security cameras and bypass the electronic locks. He and Bolt slipped through the perimeter fence, moving silently through the shadows. They reached a loading dock and found a ventilation shaft that led into the warehouse. Steward pried open the shaft and crawled inside, Bolt following close behind. The ventilation shaft led to a large storage room, filled with crates of weapons and equipment. Steward and Bolt emerged from the shaft, landing silently on the floor. They moved cautiously through the storage room, avoiding the patrolling guards. They reached a door that led to the main part of the warehouse. Steward peered through the keyhole and saw Zorn standing in the center of the room, surrounded by his men. Zorn was addressing his troops, outlining their plans to capture Steward and Bolt. "The human is a nuisance, but the cub is the real prize," Zorn said, his voice cold and calculating. "The elders want it back, and we will deliver it to them. Alive, if possible. But dead is acceptable too." Steward gritted his teeth in anger. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had to strike now. He kicked open the door and charged into the room, firing his blaster pistol. Bolt followed close behind, his claws extended. The Chonos warriors were caught off guard. They scrambled for their weapons as Steward and Bolt attacked. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Blaster fire filled the air as Steward and Bolt fought their way through the Chonos warriors. Steward used his blaster pistol to pick off the guards, taking cover behind crates and pillars. Bolt used his speed and agility to evade the energy blasts, striking at the warriors with his claws. Zorn watched the battle unfold, his face impassive. He drew his energy sword and charged toward Steward. "You will not escape, human," Zorn snarled. "The Chonos always get what they want." Steward met Zorn's charge, deflecting the energy sword with his vibroknife. He and Zorn engaged in a fierce duel, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks. Zorn was a skilled warrior, but Steward was determined. He fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, driven by his love for Bolt. He managed to disarm Zorn, knocking the energy sword from his hand. He then lunged at Zorn, tackling him to the ground. He held his vibroknife to Zorn's throat. "Tell me what's going on," Steward demanded, his voice trembling with anger. "What do the elders want with Bolt?" Zorn struggled beneath him, his eyes filled with hatred. "I will never tell you anything, human. I would rather die." "Fine," Steward said, tightening his grip on the vibroknife. "Then die." As Steward was about to deliver the killing blow, a voice echoed through the warehouse. "Stop." Chapter 10, Revelations and Alliances. A figure strode into the warehouse, flanked by two heavily armed guards. It was Garo, the Chonos commander who had tried to buy Steward off on Xylos Prime. "Garo," Zorn said, his voice surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to take charge of this situation," Garo said, his eyes fixed on Steward. "You have failed, Zorn. You have allowed a human and his pet to disrupt our plans." He turned to Steward, his expression unreadable. "I apologize for the actions of my subordinate. He was acting without my authorization." Steward didn't trust Garo. He knew that Garo was just as dangerous as Zorn. "What do you want?" Steward asked, his voice wary. "I want to offer you a deal," Garo said. "I know that you care about the cub. I can guarantee his safety, and I can offer you a life of luxury. All you have to do is hand him over to me." "I don't believe you," Steward said. "I know that the elders want Bolt for their own purposes. They'll experiment on him, dissect him. I won't let that happen." Garo sighed. "You are more stubborn than I thought. Very well. I will tell you the truth. The elders do want the cub, but not for the reasons you think." He paused, then continued. "The cub possesses a unique genetic anomaly, a dormant gene that has been lost to the Chonos for centuries. This gene has the potential to unlock incredible powers, to make our war beasts even more formidable. But there is a faction within the Chonos that opposes this research, Garo whispered, a hint of urgency in his voice. They fear the power that this gene could unleash. They want to suppress it, to eliminate all traces of it. That's why they wanted to destroy Bolt, Stewart realized. They saw him as a threat. Exactly, Garo said. And that is why I am here. I am part of a resistance group within the Chonos. We believe that the cub's genetic anomaly holds the key to our future. We want to protect him, to nurture his abilities. Why should I trust you? Stewart asked. You're a Chonos. You're all the same. I understand your skepticism, Garo said. But I assure you, I am different. I believe in a better future for the Chonos, a future where we are not defined by our desire for war. He extended his hand toward Stewart. Join me, Stewart. Help me protect the cub. Together, we can change the destiny of the Chonos. Stewart hesitated, weighing his options. He didn't trust Garo completely, but he knew that he couldn't defeat the Chonos on his own. He needed allies. He looked at Bolt, who was staring intently at Garo, his tail wagging slightly. He seemed to sense that Garo was not an enemy. Stewart made his decision. He took Garo.